Building amazing experiences that engage and delight your customers is easy with Commio. Our smart, reliable voice and messaging solutions are easy to implement and scale with you, so you can deliver more calls and texts, be more competitive, and save money. With Commio, you get peace of mind and happier customers. Find out why thousands of software platforms and enterprises trust Commio with their communications. Get a demo today.
Well, you know, when you're thinking about the present and the future of communications in the cloud, there's one person that you should talk to, one person I want to talk to, and it's Alan Quayle, the man behind TAD and TAD Hacks. If you don't know what that is, you should Google it and go look it up. Alan, welcome in.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
Great. Well, hey, thanks for taking your time away from making content with Johnny for a few minutes. Sorry.
He's so busy on other things at the moment. I'm just making content by myself.
I hope so. By the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about, guys, go over to LinkedIn and connect with Alan and look at his great videos. He's keeping his finger on the pulse of cloud communications every single day and holding companies
to account for their behavior.
Feet to the fire. You know what? Hey, look, Commio was First Think was started because of transparency, control. Exactly. That's why we started 11 years ago, and
yes.
and we love it. We love everything about being open and honest, and in here in this space. So let's start with that, Alan. So as you think about, like, okay, 2024, we're in the middle of an election season. We've got text messages popping off. We've got, you know, robocalls galore. We still have a problem with identity. But as you look back, say, the last 12, 24 months, what do you see are some of the biggest things that have gone on in this industry? And what are some things that businesses can do about it?
Yeah. Okay. So, I'm going to start sort of negative spiral, but then we'll get more positive at the end.
Good.
So we are in the midst of what I consider to be the greatest crapification of the PSTN that we have ever experienced. When we look at voice, how many, fraud, spam likely do we get? And we're to the point where we just don't answer the phone because it's most probably going to be a scam.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we have elderly, the boomers, that grew up and wanted, it was their most important thing is somebody's calling me, I must answer. And they do. And then it turns out to be a scam, and they're losing ridiculous amounts of money to the point whereby, they're dying, whether it be through suicide or, related, but people are losing their life savings through these scams. And of course, we've got all the stuff, whether it be SMS or RCS spam, pumping in daily. I was just looking because I have an Android. I was just looking at my spam folder, and it was, people keep telling me it's like the numbers are falling. Well, numbers aren't getting caught as far as I can see. I'm receiving more SMS spam today than ever. But, and this is what started me on the rant, is we did an interview with Uku from Ascente. He's the CEO for Ascente. And one of the things he said, and this is more relevant international, so I apologize because we need to keep this US focused. I will get it back to the US in a minute. But he said, we should just have published rates for SMS so that you know how much it costs. So I can then focus on the value add of what I do, rather than playing games with artificially inflated traffic and all the scams that get let through. Because that's what's happening at the moment, is all these scams are getting pumped through because somebody is making money. These messages don't get delivered unless somebody is making money. So anyway, I apologize for starting on a rant about the crapification, but we are in an unprecedented situation, especially now that the presidential campaign has got well underway. And I'm seeing even more messages that, please stop sending me political messages. I just love it. Either party, just stop it.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of crapification, I mean, we know the politicians have carved a great exception to
Yes.
opt in to any sort of, stop this. It's like, no, we can do anything we want.
Yep.
Um, I will say this, thankfully, I am getting more and more messages, but when I answer stop to the ones that I really don't want, and they happen to come from one party, guess what? I get a response rate and they do stop. So at least we
Oh,
have that going for
wow.
us, which is nice.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
I've been just too, like, I've not even trusted that a stop will lead to a stop
Yeah.
on the messages. But that's good. Okay.
Right.
Well, I'll
Right.
try
Right.
replying some stops now.
Well, let's go back for a minute though to this whole spam likely piece, which we know all of us in this industry are grappling with. Like, here at
Yeah.
Commio, we have over 10 million numbers in our system, and we also have to fight with the powers that be. Like, hey, we just sourced a brand new number, it's never been used before. Why does it always come up as spam likely? So we're
That's it.
fighting it from the good traffic side of things. We work with businesses
Exactly.
here in the US all day long that are like, look, why is it when I buy 20 numbers, 12 of them come up as spam likely? So
Yeah.
what can businesses do about that?
Yep. And this is where, again, there's a number of layers. As a business today, you've just got to basically, pay those third parties that, can deal with the ratings that those numbers get. So, you've just got to, because the problem line is people aren't answering the phone
Yeah.
because of the level of spam. I did a piece, I think it was yesterday on LinkedIn, where I was looking at, remember those good old ringtones where you used to personalize our phones with? And I was just looking at, it was billions that were being spent. And today, I think it's like 10 million. People aren't buying ringtones anymore because, let's face it, they don't even care who's calling them. It's most probably going to be spam. Now, if you can improve the ratings around the numbers that you've got, deliverability does improve, but it's not perfect. Okay. As I said, we're in the worst crapification of the PSTN that we've ever seen. The
Yeah.
bottom line is stir shaken doesn't work. Okay. Because they implemented it on the VoIP gateways, and yep, that's part of the source. But it's like a game of whack-a-mole. If you basically sort of stop one source, but you don't stop the other, which is all the PSTN gateways, guess where all the traffic goes to?
Yeah.
So, they should have implemented it. Now, of course, they go, oh, it's too expensive. Well, then use open source. You keep saying you're going to be a techco, then be a techco, use open source, and, put in the technology to start protecting your customers. Because I'm paying every month for not just mobile internet access, but for voice and SMS. And carriers need to start putting in those investments because I'm the customer, I'm paying. They should return the PSTN back to those good old days where when a call came in, it was because somebody wanted to talk to me. Now, I may not necessarily want to talk to them, but regardless, answering it, there would be somebody at the end. And we can return to those days by just implementing some technologies to solve that. So I think there's a broader industry issue that the carriers have to take, control over, simply because their customers are paying for them, paying for these services, and they've got to stop pointing the fingers at other people. It's like it's PCR, they're not doing their job, or it's basically Twilio, they're not doing their job. It's like, stop.
Yeah.
It stops with you. I'm paying you, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, deliver a service like you used to. So I think that's the end stop. But in the interim, because this is going to change rapidly over the next sort of a couple of years, you've just got to pay those services that are going to improve the ratings so your calls get delivered. It's as simple as that. But even with that, anyway, so go for it.
No, I was gonna say, answer me this one question. So, okay, don't do this, but if you want to, go do this. Look at the Google reviews for Commio. Just go to Google Maps, pull up Commio, look at our Google reviews. Every single person is coming down on us because, occasionally some bad traffic gets through, and then we get blamed because they're on the do not call list and they want to block it. And we research every single call, we take action, and we block it at our level. Why in the world, with Know Your Customer and all these new FCC rules, are people like Commio being held to account for blocking it for buying, by the way, we have to pay for them. They're very expensive. Buying the lists of do not call, implementing it on our network. Why doesn't AT&T and Verizon, why don't they implement the do not call list and say none of this is going to get through the major care? Why is that?
Because again, they've created all these middlemen. I did the paper on the messaging monopolies, all these parties they keep putting in the middle, and they just basically, it's a giant finger pointing exercise between all these other parties. The buck has to stop at the carriers for PSTN services, full stop. However, that's going to take a fair bit of time. So instead, as a business, you've just got to manage the problem that you have today, which is just ensuring your calls or your messages get through. And there, it's all about the ratings around the phone numbers. And I know you've, as Commio, you've had to fire quite a few customers that were sources of bad traffic. And in a lot of cases, it's not them; it's a third, it's one of their customers or one of their customers' customers. It's very hard to stop because of the identity issues. Now, we've covered identity before, but again, nobody in the industry really wants to tackle it because they love just pointing fingers at each other. And bear in mind that, especially when we look, from a messaging side, we really are now in a monopoly situation. It's Twilio Cinnabus. I mean, they're sat there as a massive troll. They want to produce good numbers for the second half of this year, and they're putting the squeeze on all the people in the middle. And of course, that impacts the enterprises. So again, it's a period of rapid change. We'll see, how the market evolves in 2025. All I can say is to be in the middle in 2024 has been a really situation where basically stuff has been shifted around. You've been using one provider, then you're told to use another provider, and that bind has awful performance, or you start getting rejections, and it's just been chaos.
Well, and then even worse than that, then all of a sudden you run the exact same campaign, the same messages, the same registration, the same everything. Stay with a company that wears blue shirts, and then they move it over to another company that wears a different color on the other side of the spectrum. If you look at the Roy G. Biv spectrum, and that exact everything runs perfectly fine. Like there are games being played, there's fingers being pointed, and there's rampant favoritism. There's payoffs. One company paid for another company $750 million, and magically all that. We all just we're all business people. We all want to serve our customers. We want to transmit good traffic. We don't want any spam or scammers on our networks.
Exactly.
And it seems like people, especially the higher up in the chain you go, they're making it harder and harder to be a good corporate citizen. Anyway,
exactly.
I didn't want to go super negative, but
no, but we have to capture what's really happening. Because what's also happening is, it's trust. And the organizations that I refer to as laundromat services that basically happily take the sponsorship money from companies that are generating significant bad traffic, and they have them there sat there talking about how the world's beautiful, how the TCR is working, how basically everything's really great, and they're generating tons of artificially inflated traffic to the point where you see Elon Musk basically ranting about the $60 million that all these carriers are basically taking away from him. So it's trust cannot be restored by the people that have caused this terrible situation. And of course, we've got those organizations going RCS, 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 and it's like, come on guys, you've been saying RCS for like 10 plus years. Is this the year that you think it's going to happen, like last year and the year before and the year before that? And help me understand where with RCS now you can actually deliver something that looks like, say, a Wells Fargo message, same color palette, same design. Well, I got nearly conned a couple of weeks, and maybe a couple of months ago now, with Easy Pass, the service, and it was I just did a double take. It wasn't Easy Dash Pass, it was E-Z Pass. And I was
Yeah.
I know it was so close,
Yeah.
and I didn't click on it, but I was about to.
Yep.
So we're again as an end customer, I shouldn't have to deal with that. So I
Right.
think there's as an enterprise, you've just got to take very simple, practical steps. So guess what? WhatsApp works. Talk to your customers.
Yeah. Yeah.
It still has its issues, but it's not as tough as some of the others. Email, guess what? It works. It's a terrible situation where we're
Yeah.
having to go back to email, but SMS has become bad in some regions and some areas for some communications.
Yeah.
So as a business, you've just got to be practical, down to earth, improve your rankings on your numbers, but also multi-channel, multi-channel, multi-channel.
Yeah.
And customers understand because they're seeing all this. As I said, I've got a spam folder that has daily spam SMS. I get daily spam likelies coming in. So I see that.
Right.
And if you can, and a great thing is with email, Gmail is pretty good. It
Yep.
filters out most of the crap.
Yep.
And so as long as it's not urgent and you're just informing me about something or whatever, use that. And I like it because as a customer, it's like, oh yeah, it's think of a brand. Darn Tough. They've got a new brand of socks. And which are guaranteed for life. So should you get a hole in them, you just send them back and they'll send you some new ones. But they send that and it's it's not urgent, but it's a communication that I have trust around. So yeah, I think you've got to be a lot more fleet of foot, a lot more customer responsive, and use as many channels as possible because this isn't going to get resolved soon because everything's on hold while we have the election cycle. And then that's it, November. Everybody breathes a sigh of relief or
Hopefully.
pain. And then,
Right.
and then it's, the FCC is going to change. So that's going to take some time. And then there's a whole host of things that are going to spin out of that. So, we are most probably at least another 18 months, we think, before potentially we start to see the trajectory moving better because where we are today is simply not in a good space. And as an enterprise, you've got to be fleet of foot, responsive to your customers, and using as many channels as possible to find what works.
Yeah. So, all right, Alan, I'm going to take away from this. Omni-channel is key. You got to communicate through all those different channels. You can't just rely on one or two. You got to think about WhatsApp, think about that's, and RCS, hopefully in the future. I hear what you're saying for the near term, for the next 18 months. But in the meantime, and you and I have talked about this many times, until we come up with a real identity solution, like business A has some sort of an electronic and paper document that says, this is me. And that needs to follow all voice and messaging and RCS, all different communication until that exists. And that's going to probably have to come through the FCC.
Yes.
We are stuck in, as you so eloquently said, the crapification. And by the way, congrats. I think this is the first podcast in history that I've made that I'm going to have to put a beep in. So thanks for doing that.
I'm happy to help you on that one.
Congrats, Alan. But no, hey, I appreciate your insights on the current and the near term for communications, and keep up all your great work on LinkedIn. By the way, if you guys have not connected with Alan Quayle right here on LinkedIn, you should do that. You're going to get all the best information from his newsletter and stay up to date, as well as have some fun with Johnny, which I get way too many posts every day in the best possible way from that guy and from you.
In the best possible taste.
Exactly. But hey, I appreciate you keeping it transparent and real, and have a great rest of your year. And let's all buckle up and hold on to our phones while they catch on fire with all these new messages.
You got it.
This campaign.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Alan. You have a great one.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Well, when it comes to the future of voice over the internet, voice over IP, and all things that are shaken and identity, we really need to think about how to protect your brand in the communication ecosphere. So, of course, I had to go to Molly Weis over at our friends at Numerical. Molly, welcome in.
Hi, thank you, Tim. Great to be here.
It's been a minute. I'm glad we got to get you back on here. Hope your summer's been going well. But let's start off with, this whole protecting your brand theme, which is, we were just talking with Alan a minute ago about, what we need to do to sort of clean up the ecosphere. He used some interesting terms. One of the terms I had to bleep for the first time in podcasting history, which you may or may not agree with. But how does, when we think about sort of spam likely and spam in general, and these unwanted text messages and calls, how can spam really, hurt your legitimate brand?
Sure. This is a great question. And, to start off by answering, I'm going to say these spam and scam calls are really easy to recognize when they land on our cell phones. We're inundated with them all the time. We can usually take one look down at that potential spam label and pretty much just set the phone right back down. We're not answering that call. But the problem is that hundreds of thousands of legitimate businesses coast to coast are being labeled as spam and error, and they're not aware of it. You think, oh, it's just a telemarketer, it's just something, it's a spam call, but it might be you. It might be your business calling from its outbound lines. So for the consumers side of this, consumers who are waiting for calls from those legitimate businesses, think about your hospitals, someone you just requested to contact you online for a free estimate for something that you're looking for in your home, your airline calling you with a resolution for a flight rebooking you desperately want to hear about. These are the calls we want to receive. And if those come in labeled as a spam, we're not going to answer those. We're going to ignore those. We're going to get frustrated. We're going to start feeling negatively about the brands that we wanted to do business with. And if we do answer those calls, our conversation is going to start out on the wrong foot. Skepticism, annoyance. Who are you? Why are you calling me? And so the consumer's perspective on that's not good. From the business perspective, any business that is out there who is doing outreach by phone has really invested a lot of time, energy, money, strategy, resources into setting up an outbound calling campaign, wants it to be as successful as possible. And Tim, you guys know how much goes into setting up a brand new outbound calling campaign start to finish. It's a lot. And at that very last mile of the call, agent dials the number is dialed, the call actually reaches that consumer's cell phone. You cannot have that call displaying as a spam. That call is not going to be answered. It's not going to be trusted. And it means every penny you've just put into these campaigns is possibly going to be wasted because that call is essentially not a trusted call, not going to be answered. So that's how spam impacts a legitimate brand. There's a lot of different implications.
Yeah, and I think the proper response to that is if you're at all facing those issues, you should definitely come over and check out Numerical and your suite of services that can help. But I think part of this too, by the way, Molly, is that we know that there are some bad actors out there that are doing something called spoofing. And I'm wondering if you could fill us in. I think most of us know what that is if we're in the industry, but if we're not, like sometimes we actually get a call that looks like it's coming from a legitimate brand, but it may be spoofed. So how does that work and how can that even happen?
Yeah. So another really great question. So how can it even happen? It can happen because there's legitimate use cases for spoofing. So let's just kind of walk through this a little bit. So call spoofing is when a caller alters the information that's sent to a caller ID display to show a different number or caller ID name or number and caller ID name than the call originates from. So this can make it appear as if the call you're receiving might be coming from a different place, a different person or business, giving you, as the caller, essentially the ability to display any phone number information that you want. And why can this happen? There are legitimate use cases for this that make a lot of sense. So pharmacies are a really good one. Let's say there's a scheduled call that's going out to a customer with some kind of standard reminder, it's time for your vaccination, your prescription has been sitting here on the shelf for a while. That's going to probably originate from some kind of corporate contact center. But in this case, it would be a lot nicer for that customer to just get a call from a local number. That way, if the customer has a question about that and wants to call and talk to that local pharmacy, they're just served up that number. So they call that back, they talk to the most logical person for them to talk to, and this is great. So this is a wonderful use case for spoofing, the ability to do this. But what is not so good is when bad actors misuse this and they steal, make up, in some cases, someone else's phone number or a number that doesn't even exist just for the purposes of hiding who they really are, what their number really is, so they can present whoever else's phone number they want, an identity, and they have no permission to do this. This is illegal, and now they're trying to impersonate somebody else. They're using this as an intent to mislead you, try to steal your personal information, try to pretend that you're somebody else, impersonate, in the very worst cases, a trusted authority, contact, or business that you know, to try to, fraud you. This is a huge problem. This was a big crusade of the Stir Shaken protocol, meant to be able to stop illegal call spoofing by, no longer delivering calls that aren't verified to be coming from exactly where they're supposed to be. Still a lot of work going into this, but one of the most important things that you can just kind of do now, as we're all still, the industry is working to continue to try to solve all of this for good 100% of the time, is just verify who you're talking to. If you think you're getting a call from somebody, it appears to be your bank, have them verify who they actually are before you ever, exchange any type of critical information with people who are calling you.
Yeah, and actually say, hey, give me your phone number, your name, and then let me call you back. Make sure it matches up with their website, whatever it is. Yeah, interesting. By the way, Molly, my favorite comeback is when I get a call. I'm like, this no way. I don't even have a Chase bank account. Why am I getting this call from Chase? And I'll answer it, and they're like, oh, we had some problem with your account. I'm like, great. Mail me whatever it is I need to do, and I'll get it in the mail, and that way I know you're legit. They will never mail it to you. Anyway,
great strategy.
I tell it to my mother-in-law all the time. Like, whatever it is, just tell them to mail it to you, or just hang up. And I think she already mentioned Stir Shaken. I think that was a first attempt, but of course, just like Alan said a couple of minutes ago, that only covers sort of the internet side, not the PSTN side, not the physical hardware side. And they put the clamps down on the internet side. Guess what? There's going to be a lot more PSTNs popping up, hardware that's uncontrollable. So there's still things that could go through the pipes. And I think part of the way that folks like Commio, for instance, are trying to address this, or really any provider of voice services on the internet side, is know your customer. So in the last 3 years or so, we've massively tightened up. If somebody wants to come and send calls or texts through our network, they're going to go through a bit of a paperwork process to verify, do they have a tax ID? There's about, I don't know, 30 things, I think, on that list. Well, maybe not 30. Well, maybe if you add them all up, there's close to that. But it's like they need to verify who they are before we can put them on the network. And sometimes it's their customer's customer that's doing these spoofing things that thankfully we detect very early and can shut down very fast, but occasionally stuff leaks through. So, let's talk a little bit about know your customer. So I think one of the big questions we get is who does sort of know your customer KYC apply to? And, kind of give us a primer on how that works right now.
Sure. So know your customer, otherwise known as KYC. This is, generally speaking, a set of processes and policies that typically voice service providers are going to use to evaluate a customer's identity and communication intent, along with the other 30, however many things that you're asking for, or anybody's asking for, basically throughout the customer life cycle. So it's an upfront thing, and then it's also an ongoing monitoring thing, right? So you use it over the course of your relationship with whoever this customer is. KYC is used in finance and banking, really any industry where security is key. And for communications, where this is involved, it's now an essential way for voice service providers to put that protocol and policy in place to avoid unknowingly or knowingly delivering or facilitating illegal traffic, either from yourself, like it's perfect, Tim, you said, yourself, your customer, their customers, and anybody who trickles down underneath them. You don't want to facilitate this traffic. You want to know every single thing that's coming at all these different steps so you can avoid facing federal enforcement or a shutdown of your entire network or all of your customers, losing access to being able to call outbound. And you asked, who does it apply to? So it applies typically mainly to communication service providers, but it's also important for any BPO contact centers, right, who might be delivering communications on behalf of multiple enterprises. In any instance here, before you agree to take on a new client who you're representing via phone call in any way, KYC is paramount to ensuring you're not enabling a bad actor to pretend to be somebody else to deliver this illegitimate call traffic to innocent U.S. citizens. And it can be a little confusing to wrap your head around. And KYC, while it's an expectation of the federal authorities now, you want to make sure that everybody's doing some kind of robocall mitigation activity, but they don't necessarily spell it out for you. What exactly does that mean? What exactly am I supposed to do? Numerical went ahead and put together a pretty cool resource for this. So anyone out there who's wondering about KYC, wants to learn a little bit more about it, you can head to numerical.com/KYC. We have a full resource library, including this downloadable. It's a plug and play KYC model standards guide for communications providers. It's pretty cool just to see what generally we would recommend goes into a policy like this. And then you can kind of choose your own path to implement whatever the 30 or so items that you might believe are important to collect before you onboard a new customer.
Yeah, that's great. I know we spread the word about that a couple of months ago, and we get a lot of traffic around that and a lot of interest because you guys have done all the heavy lifting of, look, if you know, again, if you're accepting people onto a network, you need to do a KYC process and you want to share how you're addressing KYC. You guys have already done all the hard work. So appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I think last but not least, so we talked a lot about a lot of things here about how to protect your brand, how does spoofing work, know your customer, but from your side of the fence there at Numerical, what are the tools that are available to help, people who are watching protect their brand?
Yeah, absolutely. Our number one top recommendation here is just going to be to start with the phone numbers themselves. Get every single phone number that you're looking to communicate with customers registered, protect those with number reputation management. It all starts by making sure they're at least coming through as a trusted phone number, and then you can kind of build off of it from there. So at Numerical, we do this by running our own KYC process first on who you are. So we verify the fact that you're a real company, you're legitimate, you have the consent to be calling the people you're calling, the numbers are owned by you, you're free to use them. Once we do this, we can pass this through down to the carriers and their analytics partners. They know who you are. They know these numbers should be trusted. You're calling legitimately. So you shouldn't be labeled like a spam or a scam or a fraud or blocked right at the network level. This gets our customers around 99.8% of all of their numbers displaying clean and label free at any time. The remaining little 2%, because the algorithms change and you can't, people can't control that. Spam labeling is going to come in and out. We have a totally no activity needed by you process where we push those through for labeling correction. You can continue to do your daily business. We'll get those labels taken care of for you. You can track how all of this is resolving in dashboards, and we've got unlimited amount of labeling correction that we can do for you as often as you want or whenever you need it. So this is the place that we like people to start. And if you're out there and you're dialing outbound, we usually like to ask the question, do you know right now, are you 100% sure how 100% of your phone numbers are showing up to 100% of the people that you're out there trying to call, right? Because most people feel like, okay, I've got my call campaign, I have all my phone numbers, my IT department maybe, updated our CNAM, so I think everything's showing up great and we're good to go. But are you sure? Are you sure? So for anyone who just is kind of curious about this, just getting started, we have another free tool on our website that we like to recommend for people just getting started out here. This is available at numerical.com/number-check. So you can come here, you can plug in a couple of outbound phone numbers just to see. We'll run them through and we'll send back to you screenshots of how the calls show up. So you can look with an actual screenshot of those calls. Is it showing up the way you want? Or maybe it does have a spam label or has some kind of crazy caller ID name showing up on it. Or maybe just on one network, maybe on all of them. So this is where we'd recommend you start too. And we're also proud Commio partners. So if any of this is resonating with you, you're interested in ensuring how your phone numbers are displaying, reach out to Tim and his team at Commio, reach out to us at Numerical directly, and we'd be happy to get together and spend time chatting with you one-on-one to learn more and give you some more recommendations, personal.
Fantastic. And by the way, just full disclosure, right after we changed our name to Commio from Think, I did the same thing. We changed our CNAM, we did all the above, and I went to you guys and you guys verified that we look great. So thank you for that.
Awesome.
Everybody else should do it as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Molly. Well, hey, thanks for taking some time to talk to us and hope you've been having a great summer. And this will not be the last time we speak for sure. And we're excited that we're actually in the process of implementing some of Numerical's tools. So that's an early heads up, and you'll be seeing more from Commio in the coming weeks and months. So thanks again for all you guys do and all you do, and appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you.
Well, when it comes to protecting consumers and businesses from illegal robocalling and text messaging that we potentially might not want to have on our networks, there's nobody better to speak to those things and give us some tips than Mark Spear, who's our VP of Product and Carrier Relations. Mark, welcome in.
Thanks, Tim. Good to be with you.
Thanks. I wanted to start with, we've been just talking with a couple folks here. And, a recurring theme keeps coming up about, what can everyday people do? The spam likely, we've talked through identification solutions, we talked through branded calling with Molly. Anyway, we talked about a couple solutions, but today, unfortunately, our phones are still filled with these spam likely calls and worse, actual spam that can be dangerous. What should a consumer do to stop and or report spam?
Well, there's several things you can do. Um, you know, I'm fascinated by the introduction of the mobile phone into our society. I mean, it's changed behavior completely. From making things great to making things absurd. I notice when I go to Starbucks or something like that, especially if it's like at an airport or maybe a conference or something like that, there'll be 50 people in line staring at their phones. And they all get the same emails that I do, maybe the same spam messages I do. A few of these people are brain surgeons, so they're not like saving lives. So it's amazing. But that behavior and this new device in our worlds has created the need to protect ourselves. So you raise a good point, but I think there's some fairly simple things that we can do together to mitigate some of this chaos. And the first is just an obvious one, and that's to block the numbers. If you receive a spam message or a call or something like that, it's pretty easy to block the number. I know Apple makes it pretty easy on their devices, and I know the Android devices have the same capability. So just learning how your phone operates and being able to block a telephone number is a good first step. Something else you can do, and I don't necessarily recommend it, but you can use your phone in do not disturb mode, where you're only getting calls from the people that are in your contact list. And I don't know about you, but I don't have everybody in my contact list that needs to reach me. It could be a variety of telephone numbers from the same doctor's office or something like that. I want to receive those calls. So
Yeah.
that's not a good option for me. I don't know many people that really works for, but it's certainly an option. There's also a number of call blocking applications out there. I've used a couple of them in the past, and to be frank, they weren't stellar at the time. I'm sure they've improved some. But I think the most effective thing that a consumer can do when they get a spam message specifically is to forward that message to spam at 7726. All of the major carriers, T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T can handle that. So you send the message to spam, and the carriers then assimilate that into their databases, and they continually work on their analytics to improve call blocking measures. If they see repeated trends from certain numbers, they may engage regulatory authorities for further enforcement actions. But the more people that forward those texts to that 7726, the better the data is that the carriers can use to collaborate in shutting down some of those spam operators. So those are my thoughts on how to easily, mitigate the number of spam calls to your device.
Yeah, I think you're right. You want to block those numbers. The calls will stop because you blocked it. They may jump to other numbers, but it's kind of let's be real. We're living in a world of whack-a-mole. And the messages, you bring up a good point. We've had Scott Navratil on here who works with our biggest messaging customers, and he and I have showed examples where, if one of our customers, for instance, if they start a new campaign and that opt-out rate is above 0.5%, we find out about it and we investigate it. So you should know that it feels like a fool's errand or a waste of time, but the more reporting that consumers do, the better the ecosystem gets. Now, we could debate all day, Mark, about, I still don't understand why the carriers themselves haven't been more proactive in, for instance, following the do not call list. I mean, I know they're the big guys. They just want to deliver calls and they sort of leave it to us and people below us to do the do not call blocking. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. But new solutions will arise and we'll continue to get better. So that makes sense. And by the way, you get those text messages, forward them to 7726. Exactly right. But, let's take a step back. So, okay, consumers, you have your steps that you can take. Now let's talk about providers. Commio is one of many providers of voice and messaging services. And what are some of the legal issues that we face as a provider? So we're participating in the ecosphere. We're trying to sign up companies that are sending good traffic, good messages, good calls, and help people get around stuff that might not be totally on the up and up. But there are some legal issues that we face, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the voice side, obviously, the robocalls is significant, and the industry has taken an important first step, and that's implementing STIR/SHAKEN, and that's sort of behind us now. And I think we're seeing some of the benefits of that rollout. I think in our business, though, we're seeing the messaging side of the house really grow. And as you know, messaging is largely unregulated. So to some degree, it's kind of the wild, wild west out there. And sort of by default, the carriers have found themselves in sort of a de facto regulatory role. They're the ones that sort of enforce what will ultimately make it to their end users. And those of us in the messaging space are continually trying to clarify that and make sure we understand what the rules of the road are. But at the same time, the carriers are reluctant to share what they're looking for because they know the bad guys will use that information to get around it and continue to do bad things. So it's different. And I think there's some regulatory changes on the horizon with respect to messaging, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But those are the big ones. Enforcing the TPCA or TCPA is also a big issue, and I think to the extent providers can incorporate the enforcement mechanisms into their contracts for violations of that, I think that will serve the ecosystem well. I think, I know Commio has done a good job with updating our AUP to incorporate those enforcement mechanisms, and then we tie that to our contract. So we've been very clear in our AUP what our expectations are for the kind of traffic that we will permit onto our network, and identify the remedies for not doing so.
Yeah, we're also, I know, a member of the Traceback group, and and we have a very clear link right on our website, top nav, report a call. If you get a call and you use a tool to identify that you think it came, that one of the numbers are, on our network, it goes right to our NOC, and I see all the back and forth all day long when those reports come in. So Mark, I think you'd agree that, unfortunately, from a legal perspective, we certainly follow all the rules. We've got all the right things in place. We're a member of the, robocall mitigation database. We we have to report directly to the FCC on our own way. It's sort of our customers and their customers where some of the issues pop up. So, it's up to us to make sure that we're policing our network, policing our customers, and then taking the appropriate action, which again is the central feeding point back up to our network operations center. I see that activity. So long story short is there are legal issues, but you want to work with somebody who has all these, proper procedures and monitoring things in place. And that, when customers do occasionally, if they have a customer who has an issue, we make sure that we're following up. And, we all just want to see this ecosystem, heal itself and get better over time.
Exactly.
But when we think about those legal issues, how can, companies that are, in this space protect themselves?
Well, I think it's important for, providers like Commio and others to make sure that they have the right technology in place to filter, to block, to monitor. They have a robust security platform in place. Maybe it's a third-party software to ensure or enforce another level of security onto the network. I think all those things are important. I think there's the regulatory things that we just talked about, making sure that everything is STIR/SHAKEN compliant. I think it also requires being part of a community that's got their eye on the future in terms of changes that are coming. I think there's been all this talk about AI lately, and we don't even know how AI is going to fully make its way into our business. We already use some of it in the technology of our network, but its uses, its applications are almost limitless, and I think there's going to have to be a real vigilance in making sure that everybody's trying to use AI for the positive benefits that it can deliver. As we know in our business, even up till now, there's always kind of a dark alley where certain folks like to play. And we want to make sure that AI is being used appropriately in our network. It's going to be a proliferation. I can't even begin to think of all of the applications that it will have. And I think everybody's going to have to really play a role in making sure that we communicate about that. It's making its way into messaging already. I mean, the FCC's considering, some action to make sure that if you're using AI to create your message, that you say so that they know it's being created that way. So there's lots more to come on that front.
Got it. Well, Mark, I appreciate all your insights into the legal side of things, consumers protecting themselves, and sort of a look ahead into the future, and really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
You bet. Thank you, Tim.
Building amazing experiences that engage and delight your customers is easy with Commio. Our smart, reliable voice and messaging solutions are easy to implement and scale with you, so you can deliver more calls and texts, be more competitive, and save money. With Commio, you get peace of mind and happier customers. Find out why thousands of software platforms and enterprises trust Commio with their communications. Get a demo today.